Miss Syneva Runyan. Uh-oh. Hey.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Hi, thanks for coming to my talk. I'm going to speak today on the danger zone, web security vulnerabilities in React. My name is Syneva Runyan. I'm an engineering manager at Mailchimp and a part-time grad student at Georgia Tech's online master's in computer science program. It was actually in that program a few semesters ago. I was taking an info security class, and I realized I could recite the definition for cross-site scripting or cross-site request forgery, but I really couldn't picture in my mind what the execution of those attacks would look like, and that's kind of what inspired the presentation today. Quick disclaimer, this presentation is solely for educational purposes. I'm not responsible in the event of any criminal charges brought against individuals misusing this information in the presentation. Break the law. When in doubt, don't do it. Got it? All right, good, thanks. The problem space. I'm going to make the assumption that most of you guys know what cybersecurity attacks are in general. In fact, if you're from the South, you might have firsthand experience dealing with the consequences of cyber attacks recently when a ransomware gang triggered the shutdown of a major oil pipeline, resulting in astronomically high gas prices and craziness in the South, or Florida. That was just one example of hundreds, thousands of cyber attacks that have happened this year. By the end of the year, the total cost of cybercrime damages is projected to reach $6 trillion annually. If you break that number down, each individual attack costs an average of $200,000. That's a lot of money, especially if you're a small business. And 43% of attacks are aimed at small businesses. Of these small businesses attacked, 60% go out of business within 6 months of the incident. So whether we work for a big company or a small company, how can we as developers work to combat cybercrime? In my mind, some of the best things we can do is educate ourselves on vulnerabilities and incorporate mitigation practices in our day-to-day workflows. It's worth mentioning, I'm about to go very deep into cross-site scripting attacks, but there are literally hundreds of thousands of web security vulnerabilities that exist out there. So I encourage you all to go and do your own research into the topic after this presentation. But in the meantime, cross-site scripting. So by definition, cross-site scripting happens when an attacker injects malicious code into a web page and that code is executed in the browser. Here's a diagram of what an exploit might look like. So I'm an attacker. I write a malicious script, and I find a way to inject it into a web page. I might send a script-injected link to an unsuspecting victim. That victim clicks on the link, and they're actually going to load a legitimate web page, but next to that legitimate web page, the malicious script is loaded as well. The user might enter private information. That information can be sent back to the attacker. One example of a cross-site scripting attack happened in 2014, and eBay was the target. So attackers took advantage of a cross-site scripting vulnerability in product listings. The attackers created a whole bunch of links for cheap iPhones. When you see a deal like a cheap iPhone that's too good to believe, it probably is too good to believe. That's what happened in this case. So victims would click on this product listing page, but instead of seeing a cheap iPhone, they'd be redirected to a phishing page. They'd be prompted to enter their credentials, and those credentials would then be sent back to the attacker. Another example of a cross-site scripting attack happened in 2017. It was targeted at Steam. So in this case, a cross-site scripting vulnerability was taken advantage of for profile pages. Attackers would create these malicious profile pages. When a user saw and clicked on these malicious profile pages, again, they'd be redirected to a phishing page. So malware would actually download on their computers in the background. They'd be prompted to enter their credentials. They'd enter their credentials, and behind the scenes, the attackers would drain their Steam wallet funds. Now that we've talked about cross-site scripting attacks in general, let's dive a little bit more into React and see what the framework does to help prevent cross-site scripting attacks maybe, or what vulnerabilities exist in the framework. To demonstrate this, I'm going to show a series of cross-site scripting examples. I've crafted these exploits with the goal of stealing social media profile passwords. This is the absolutely beautiful profile page that I've created to show these examples. You can see the functionality is pretty basic. You can view someone's name, an image, a YouTube channel link, and then a rich text bio. There's also this edit profile functionality, and again, you can edit the name, the YouTube channel, the rich text bio. So, in my first attempt, I want to save a minified version as his name here. And then when a victim opens this profile page, I want my script to be executed. I don't want them to see Kenny logins. I want my script to be executed. This is maybe something of what my script would look like. You can see the important parts. So my script tells the user that their session's timed out. It also prompts them to re-enter the password. And then, the on-submit of the form here, when a user submits that form, the password is then emailed to me, the attacker. If my attack is successful, it might look something like this. So again, you see the user's told their session's timed out. They're prompted to re-enter their password to continue. Let us take a look at what happens. So here I am. I'm going to edit my profile page. The name field, I paste the script. I save the profile. I view the profile. And look at that. So you can see, obviously, my script wasn't executed. You can see the text content right there printed out on the screen. So that's great. React prevented this cross-site scripting attack. We can all go home and feel safe using React, right? Yeah. Well, before we jump to conclusions, let's dive a little bit into the scenes and see what's happening. This is what the JSX might look like for a simple profile page. You can see there's an H1. The profile name is displayed right there. Behind the scenes, in order to get this JSX to display in your browser, a transpilation process happens. So this JSX is turned into JavaScript, and that looks something like this. Syntactical sugar on the left here, and then the breakdown to vanilla JavaScript. Of particular interest is the use of the React API. So you'll see React DOM render, React create element. It's the React create element that we're interested in this case. So the React create element function takes in a type, it takes in props, and it takes in children. Tying back in our profile name example, create element is called with an H1 as a type. There's no props here, so an empty object is used. And then the profile name, so again, remember, the profile name in this case was a malicious script, is passed as the child. The fact that it was passed as this third argument, the child, is important here. Because behind the scenes, React will actually review data passed here and auto-escape scripts. So this is an example of React preventing a cross-site script vulnerability. But I am a very persistent hacker. So I'm going to continue down the page, and this time in my second attempt, I want to target the YouTube channel right there. I've modified my script a little bit, so I'm using the JavaScript protocol here. You might be used to protocols, so you type in a URL in your browser, you use the HTTPS protocol. You may have come across the Mail2 protocol or the TEL protocol when creating links to an email or a phone number in a web application. The JavaScript protocol does about what you expect. When you click on a link with a JavaScript profile, it'll execute the script set there. Again, you can see I'm telling the user the session is timed out, prompting them to re-enter their password, and then I'll email the password to me, the attacker, when the form's submitted. If the attack's successful, this is what it might look like. So let's jump in. So here I am. I'm pasting my script right here using the JavaScript protocol. I go to save. I view my profile. I click on the YouTube channel, and look at that. So this is an example of a successful cross-site scripting attack, because my malicious script has been injected into the web page and executed in the user's browser. So what's happening here? Why was the first attack blocked and the second attack successful? Going back to the JavaScript, you might already notice some differences between this H1 tag here and the A tag used for the YouTube channel. In the H1 example, the profile name was a child. In this example, the href the profile.youtube channel is a prop. Digging back into the create element function, that prop is passed as a second argument, not the third argument, but the second argument. Behind the scenes, props do not have the same cross-site scripting protections as children. ***. So we put a *** here, because if you actually try to conduct this cross-site scripting attack in an application today, you'll see this warning in the console. So it works today. In future versions of React, this type of attack will actually be prevented and blocked. React recognized it as a security vulnerability and has done something to address it. But in the meantime, before that is released, what can we do to mitigate this type of cross-site scripting attack? Validate, validate, validate. So you can see here an example of what validation might look like. So the first thing you can do is really make sure that the protocol provided in any URL, any user inputted URL, is HTTPS. You can also get even more specific in your validation. So in this case, I'm expecting a YouTube link. So let's go ahead and check to make sure that the user is actually giving me a YouTube link. You should also practice defense in depth. So don't just validate this in the client. Make sure you're validating server side, and you can even validate before injecting content into the web page. In general, ignore the advice that you should trust but verify in favor of never trusting and always verifying content. All right, so I'm a long-term thinking hacker. I want to build a solution that won't just work for today, but I want my cross-site scripting attack to work forever in the future. So I'm going to conduct a third attempt. In this attempt, I want to save my script as the rich text bio here on the page. I've modified my script to look a little bit different in this case. So I have a button right here with an on-click function. When that button is clicked, I want my function to be executed. It's the same type of script you'll see, where the user is prompted that their session is timed out, told that they need to re-enter their password. When they do, that password is emailed to me, the attacker. I also have this lovely Kenny Loggins image injected onto the page. And when that image is loaded, I'm going to click that hidden button. If this attack's successful, same, prompted that their session is timed out, told to re-enter their password. Let's take a look. All right, I go to edit my profile. I'm pasting that script. I save it, I view the profile, look at that. So this cross-site scripting attack was, again, successful. This might not surprise you because we saw in the second attempt when a prompt was used here that no cross-site scripting prevention was built into React. But this prop is a little bit different. So take note of the name. Whenever you see the word dangerous in React code, this isn't a mistake. So the team named it dangerously set inner HTML for a reason. That's because it is indeed dangerous. There is no built-in cross-site scripting protections with props or with dangerously set inner HTML. So that being said, how can we really make sure we mitigate this type of cross-site scripting attack? So again, validate content, defense in depth, validate in the client, validate server-side, validate again in the client. You can also leverage tools, in this case, for dangerously set inner HTML, such as DOM Purify. So DOM Purify is a library that's available that actually prevents cross-site scripting attacks. It's a sanitizer for HTML. It'll strip out any script tags that a user might provide. And you can use this really nifty tool with ESLint. So there's this rule, no sanitizer with danger. And this ESLint rule will throw an error when you use dangerously set inner HTML without sanitation. So that's a great tool to use as well. Again, don't trust, always verify. So that concludes the demo portion of my attack. You saw successful attempts, you saw what React does and what React doesn't do, what React's going to do in future versions. But it's worth noting that this isn't an all-encompassing presentation. Again, you might remember at the beginning, there are hundreds of thousands of web security vulnerabilities out there. I only touched the surface of cross-site scripting vulnerabilities. If you're interested in learning more, and I hope you guys are, OWASP publishes a list of top 10 web security vulnerabilities. That's a great resource to check out. You can also just do some basic things in your day-to-day coding, such as keeping your dependencies up to date, that will really help prevent web security vulnerabilities in your application. So I'm going to leave you with some final thoughts. The first is make sure you're always looking out for danger zones. Don't trust, always verify. And finally, when you do see web security